The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
All right, we're back. We're here live, being recorded at the Westgate Resort in Las Vegas, at the International Showroom in Elvis Presley's dressing room. And we're back with episode number 2 with Talbot Snow, a longtime friend who's done showbiz with me, just about our whole lives together, our last 40 years plus.
Mm-hmm.
So we left off last time. You've flown through, you Peter Panned through a window. You were unsuccessful landing on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You came to Vegas, and now you guys are established in Las Vegas. You're here, have a home, and I was trying to remember when, but I think it was in September, October of 1980 that you and I met, somewhere around there.
Yep. I remember, I think I was walking through the chapel gym with my boombox. I think. I know that was one of the times we met.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And, I love to show that thing off. I still own that thing.
Oh, do you really? Wow.
It doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
But, and there's a funny story behind that, too. When we left Christchurch, New Zealand, it was kind of, on the one hand, it was planned, but on the other hand, there were some things we were shooting from the hip. Well, Dad was, anyway. And one of those things was, I had this very kind of homemade DJ rig in Christchurch made up of secondhand stereo components. I basically begged, stole, borrowed.
Whatever it took to get it going, yeah.
Yeah. And so I had like a couple of, nice big size speakers and a receiver, amplifier, stereo, what do you call that? Stereo receiver amplifier thingy. And a couple cassette decks and a turntable and things like that. And even a homemade light show. And as we were leaving, I woke up one morning in Christchurch. Our house was full of all of our stuff, our furniture and everything. And Dad had hired what do you call those guys?
A moving company or?
No, they were auctioneers.
Oh, auction, okay, yeah.
And by the end of the day, they came in. By the end of the day, the house was empty. Including all my wonderful sound equipment. And
that was probably a little painful.
Yeah.
I imagine it wasn't very good, yeah.
And I wasn't even able to take my records. I had a nice record collection and cassettes and whatnot, and it just seemed like a bit of a rush there. So on the way over, when we were flying over to Las Vegas, we landed in Samoa, American Samoa. For a brief...
Yeah, a little layover there, yeah.
Layover. And they had this duty-free shop. And in there was this beautiful boombox. It was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It had LED readouts and VU meters, and it had AM, FM, shortwave 1, 2, 3, 4. It had all the bells and whistles. Had, I think at least 4 speakers inside the thing.
Yeah.
Cassette deck with a search system. It could find the different tracks on your on your cassette, your different songs.
Oh yeah.
Track 1, track 2, whatever. I had all the bells and whistles. And I saw that thing, and I went over to Dad and go, "Hey, Dad, you sold all my stuff for like whatever. I don't even know how much you sold it for with the auctioneer. You owe me."
Yeah, well, that's logical. I mean,
And so I didn't think it would work, but he actually did it. He okay. And it was like $400, which was a lot of money.
Yeah, 1980, that's a big chunk of change.
In those days for a boombox, I couldn't believe that he agreed.
But here's the question. Who made it?
It was a Sharp.
Sharp. That's right. Yep.
And it was a good unit. That's why it still actually works to this day, right? It's not in perfect order. But back in those days, I guess they were making, good quality units.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded great for a boombox. You could put it in a good sized room, and it had pretty decent sound. It wasn't like a big PA or a DJ rig or anything, but it still had amazing sound for the size of the unit. And that was the unit I carried around with me in Las Vegas. That was my, whatever you want to call it, my show off thing. Because I was a fish out of water here in Vegas. I didn't know how to relate to people very much, and I'd left all my friends behind, girlfriend, and we're trying to, at the time we moved into this area, as you know, I started going to Valley High School, attending the 24th Ward. There were some pretty wealthy people in the area, and we were not wealthy. We were pretty middle class, I think. And then there were, as you put it, I think one time you said there were those that were around the country club area, right?
Yep.
And those that were on the other side of Desert Inn.
Yeah, pretty much.
In a sense, right? But so it was hard, just even the sense of humor and, slang. Thankfully, we spoke English.
Yeah. Well, kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah.
We talked more like this,
Couldn't understand you for nothing for a while there.
Couldn't understand a bloody thing, Yeah. And so it was hard to relate, especially at that age, 14. Man, that's a terrible time to move anytime, because you're just trying to find yourself.
Yeah.
And I was walking through the chapel one day with the boombox, and that's when you and I bumped into each other, and I guess you saw the boombox. You said, oh, well, this guy must be into some kind of music or sound or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you and I hit it off pretty quick. I figured out you were into sound equipment. You were doing sound for the stake, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, for the road shows and stuff that they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always doing something when I was 18. I was out of high school. I was working at the MGM scenery shop during the daytime, then go set up the PA and the sound for the road shows, which is all the different groups getting together and putting on a skit and stuff like that. A lot of fun. And I think that's the one that you actually showed up and you had the some of the parts of you were starting to put together your new DJ system.
Mm-hmm.
And you showed up with a couple pieces.
Yep.
And Johnny Valnegro and Lucho and a couple were helping you do a couple things. You kind of levitated with them a little bit, and because they kind of levitated that stuff too. We all dug
Yeah.
the funk music, and,
Yep.
and if a PA could make the funk music loud, we liked it.
Well, Johnny Johnny and Lucho both were good dancers. The Valdenegro family had performed somewhat. They had a whole routine and things that they used to do once upon a time with outfits and everything.
Yeah.
And so they were definitely somewhat into music and entertainment, and Johnny was definitely into the funk and all that stuff. Yeah, so how I started getting equipment here, once we moved into the house from the apartment, I reminded Dad again. I said, hey, bro, remember you sold all my equipment?
Once, right? Worked once.
Yeah. I said, I seen some, went up to Commercial Center, and they had like 3 or 4, stereo stores back in those days.
Yeah, Sound Emporium.
Yep.
Wild West Sound.
Yeah, there was another place called Gold and something. I can't remember.
I can't remember. That's drawing on 44 years ago stuff.
But I would go in there and just, salivate over all the really cool speakers and, whatever. And so I'd seen a pair that were on sale, and I begged and pleaded Dad to, get me a new system, which surprisingly, again, he did. And this wasn't used. This was brand new.
Yeah.
this was some, some nice equipment, but it was more of a home stereo. It was a glorified home stereo, but really not a DJ thing. But I figured I would sort of morph it into a DJ thing. I didn't really know much about pro sound at that time, and so I had some Serwin Vegas speakers, which they do make pro speakers as well. But back then, I didn't know about all that stuff, so I had more the home version. But there were some pretty beefy speakers.
Oh yeah, they were.
And had a stereo, and I had a graphic EQ, and a turntable, a cassette deck, I think, and so there was that, and then later on too, I actually conned my dad into getting 2 more speakers, so I had 4 fairly large home speakers.
Yeah, they were pretty big. Yeah.
With 15-inch woofers in each.
Yeah.
And around that time was when you and I met, and you started bringing me into more of the world of professional sound equipment, because again you were more in that world than I was.
Yeah, I was in the Stagehands Union working out and doing all those, working around that stuff a lot more. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think we started making trips down to places like Vesley's and Drum Shop and a couple places, and just seeing what they had, and checking out what they had, and kind of talking about, well, were we going to take this, what you were doing, anything farther,
Right. And I remember we used to look at some of that really high-end gear in the pro shops, which was thousands of dollars, and we just like it seemed like a pipe dream that we'd ever get a hold of some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually we did, in various ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and picked up a few items here and there, and got the pro side of it going.
Yeah.
That's when we started going into like more of the Shure stuff, and then
Right.
down the road we went into Altec. Not the Altec, but the JBLs.
Yes.
And stuff, and
We were able to recycle, right, some of the sound equipment that casinos were getting rid of or whatever.
yeah,
Or selling cheap or whatever they were doing.
Yep.
And we were able to get some of that stuff and integrate it. And then you built that crazy cool T-shaped, the thing we call the cockpit.
yeah, the DJ console basically, and
which looked freaking amazing, right? When it was set up, it looked so cool. It was a pain in the butt to move.
Yeah.
But man, it looked great.
Well, when you're looking at it, I'm 18 years old, you're 16 basically, and we're trying to figure out how to make stuff that will work. And we got some things right, and we got some things horribly wrong.
Well, I remember you built this. It was a big T-shaped thing, right? With and you coated it. We coated it in velour, right? Black velour, and even we kind of outlined it with steel strips.
Yeah.
And on the top we had the 2 cassette decks and the mixer in the middle, and down below the various stereo components, amplifiers, whatever. And then gradually we kept adding to our speaker collection with various like the Shure brands and the whatnot, and we wouldn't always take everything just according to the gig. Sometimes we'd take everything. Sometimes we just take a couple things to a particular gig.
Yep.
Yeah, it was very cool, and you were always, there's something about you that I always liked. Not any weird gay thing.
Well, that's okay too if that's it's showbiz. No.
But just no, like there was a chemistry there.
Oh yeah.
That I liked, and you always, for whatever reason, you sort of took me under your wing, and I appreciated that. I thought, here's this guy, he's older than me, he's way more established in Vegas than I am, and you just seemed to sort of take me under your wing, and helped out with a lot of things, and brought a lot of things to my attention. And
well, it was just part of realizing that you got to help take care of some of these weirdos from other countries. I think that's about all it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that was good. I mean, you were one of my and still are one of my very, very, very special and few friends.
Yep.
You know, and Johnny and Lucho were kind of like the other ones. You know, they. I mean, again, a lonely kid from New Zealand. You know,
Yep.
and trying to relate to some of these wealthier folks that lived in this area wasn't working too well. So to be able to have friends that were just more regular guys, but who were still very talented and driven was a blessing. And I'll tell you, my dad said to me years later, I didn't know this. He told me that he had felt very inspired to come to Las Vegas. And I never knew that. That I thought it was more of a kind of a whim on his part, or that he was just sort of running away from all that stuff that happened with his company. And but he said, well, it was partly that, but also he had thought about it, prayed about it, and felt inspired to come here. And I think that's right, because I think if I had stayed back in New Zealand, I probably would not have gone on a mission. I probably wouldn't have stayed real active. With the church, well, you and I would never have met. I think coming to the U.S. opened my mind to a worldview, much more of a worldview than just living in a small city in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And opened my eyes to a lot of things, because the U.S. is a great country in so many ways. The pro-entrepreneurial spirit that's here, and the can-do spirit, and the get off your butt and do it kind of spirit, that's very much here. And maybe more so even in Vegas in a way, because there's a lot of startup situations here, a lot of startup companies, a lot of, people trying to pursue their dreams in Vegas, in entertainment in one way or another. So I think it was cool that way, and I've been able to tap into that with with my own career, such as it is.
Well, you've made a career. I mean, we're going to go into some of that. I don't know how far we're going to get into a lot of this today, but but we're looking at So basically, it was November, October, November of '80
Mm-hmm.
when we started really. We had met before that, September, stuff like that, and you had the boom box, and then you got your upgrade, and you started going into the bigger stuff, and that's when I think I was really like, oh, this guy's kind of like me. He digs the audio stuff, and stuff, and at that time I was not into the audio as much as using it and doing it, but I wasn't going into it full steam on things.
I think we saw in each other a way to expand our interests and careers.
Yeah.
More so in a way that we could do it together, more so than we could do it by ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, the together we knew. I think it was obvious that we could take something a lot farther than trying to do something on our own.
Yep.
And so that's when we decided to start up, go full bore into because that was November, and by the following June I was gone. I was heading down to Australia for a year and a half on a mission. So we basically had 6 months of how far can we take this before I've got to go, and then when I came back, basically you're going to have to be going too. So
No one thought I would go, by the way.
Yeah. Everybody gets a surprise here and there, but at the same time, so we put all this together, and we started. I remember, man, we started just doing nonstop dances and parties and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is. I'm 18, you're 16, and we've got nothing but parties and dances going. It's like, holy crud, we're starting to turn this into something. Was moving along.
It was cool. It gave us something to do, because we both had a lot of energy, right? And as teenagers, if you have a lot of energy and you don't have anything to do, you get into trouble. So, I mean, we still got into our fair share of trouble, but at least we had this thing, this constructive, creative thing that we were creating, this music business, DJ sound system thing, that we could go and do gigs.
Yep.
And and do it, and as far as I recall, I don't think we ever had a bad gig.
No.
We always did pretty good with these dances, if not very good.
Put a couple dollars in it. It was never really about the money. We
Yeah.
weren't. If it was about the money, we were horrible business people at that time.
Right.
Because, we'd get $150, $200 to do a dance, and we'd go and spend it that night going down to Mikhail's or something, have
Yeah.
some dinner, and then the next week we would go Tuesday or Wednesday and go buy 50 new albums or whatever with it and record them, and
Yep. Yeah.
so but our catalog just kept getting bigger, and now you've got what you got. You have to have 300, 400, 500 albums at your house now.
Right. Well, and that too, the idea of doing something you like to do and seeing it turn into somewhat of a business model, even though it wasn't big bucks, but going and charging money, or making money, that was quite a revelation.
Yeah, and it's like we both had jobs. I mean, I was working. Oh man, I can't remember how much I was working. 50 to 60 hours doing the MGM scenery shop building Hollywood Jubilee. That was after the fire, even. And yeah, so that was a post fire, pre-fire and post fire, and then you had your jobs going on, and that was just our weekend thing. We did Friday night dances or Saturday night dances for schools, for church, for whoever.
Yeah. It was cool. We had a pretty good run of constant gigs, church stuff, school stuff. I remember doing an Elks Lodge, a Moose Lodge, wedding here, there, whatever, even a bar mitzvah. So we just did whatever came up.
Yeah. We weren't picky. Whoever wanted to pay us to come play with music, we were like, all right, we'll be there.
I remember we did I don't know if you were there or not. I did a gig at Sam's Club or Sam's Town, I'm going to say, Sam's Town Casino. It was, I can't remember what it was. It was like some sort of, it might have been a wedding or a private party or something. And we had that crazy light show that we'd built.
Yeah.
It was a big rectangular box with, squares and a light in each square, and we had lined it with tinfoil, right?
Yeah. It was homemade.
Homemade. It looked pretty cool. And I remember the first time we plugged it in, the thing blew, like sparks, and blew a breaker and everything because the tinfoil was short-circuiting everything.
Yeah. Yeah, didn't realize that some of the tinfoil was touching the leads.
Right. And so we had to, redesign it a bit, but we got it figured out, Anyway, we took that light show to this Sam's Town gig, and right in the middle of the gig, that whole thing fell down on the bridge of my nose.
Oh, man.
Right here. I still have this. I still can feel the scar. And the whole thing, like, bang, like this.
Just fell backwards and smacked you or
It just
something?
kind of came down. Like, I hadn't tightened the
You hadn't tightened the
holes
lock
properly.
nuts.
Yeah. So it just kind of came down on my head. I looked up and boom, it hit me right on the bridge of the nose. Right on the bridge of the nose and between my eyes. And thankfully, weirdly, it didn't seem to hurt, right? I like, wow, what was that? And I grabbed it and put it back up and tightened it up properly so it didn't fall back down. And I carried on DJing. Well, what I didn't know is it had opened this big gash, and I was bleeding like a stuck pig, and blood was pouring out all over my face. Now, I was already hot and sweaty, so I didn't notice the blood. I couldn't see myself, The blood was just pouring down my face while I'm up there DJing.
Yeah.
And I see people looking at me going, what's up with this guy? They were doing double takes, like, he's got blood all over his face. Is this part of the show or what? And then someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, look at your face. And I go, what? And I put my hands in. They were covered in blood. I went to the restroom to clean up, and I looked in the mirror and I looked like I mean, I looked like this demon. I like something out of a movie. Blood almost entirely covering my face. It was pouring out. You know, it was a big flap of skin that come off, and so it was just everywhere. And people say, "Oh, you better get to the hospital. You're gonna have to get stitches for that." And I said, "Nah." You know, I just wash it off. You know, put a wet towel or something on it and kind of pushed it back. You know, this flap of skin and carried on DJ.
Yeah. Show must go on, man. Show must go on. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was a special, Kaz, mobile sound and special DJ Lucifer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna call that the end of this episode, and we come back now. We're into 81 or so.
Okay. Okay.
And we'll continue going on through some of these things, and we'll talk about what's happening from there on out. Until then, you can take it away again.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
I sound so official.